YouTube Originals. Pristov.
In the US, about a third of adults aren't getting enough sleep. That's defined as less than 7 hours per night. For teenagers, that number is over 70%. But if you turn on the TV and look at the way that we talk about sleep, you can kind of see why.
Rich people don't sleep. My life was so good. I didn't want to sleep. I slept for 2-3 hours a night and I had a blast.
I feel like I function fine on 4 to 5 hours of sleep.
When things get really intense, I don't have time to go home and shower and change, so I just sleep here.
We live with this bizarre culture around sleep. And I think I get enough of it in spite of that. But I want to better understand what's happening to my body when I don't. So what happens to us when we lose sleep? And why do so many of us struggle to get enough of it?
Words appear on a light box. Why can't we sleep? Light titles are sketched in. Glad you asked, Season 2. Pristov is driving through Manhattan. Later he's at home with sleep monitoring equipment.
So, for the past few weeks I've been recording my sleep data with a fitness tracker. But to take that to the next level, I just picked up an at-home sleep test that'll really help me determine just how healthy my sleep actually is. So this kit is going to monitor 5 things: the air coming out of my nose, my brain activity, my blood oxygen level, my chest movements, and my heart rate.
I really feel like I'm going into the Matrix right now.
This is going to be really uncomfortable to sleep tonight, which I think is the part I'm most nervous about. Only when I've done all 5 things will all of those lights light up. I'm struggling with this whole thing.
A device strapped around his chest.
There we go. It's all green. You see that? It is 12:28. I think I'm gonna try to go to sleep and see how this goes.
Next morning.
Good morning. Oh my God. Where do I start? That was tough. Very uncomfortable to sleep with all of this stuff on. Part of me is worried because it wasn't a very normal representative night of sleep. So the next step for me is I take this thing to a sleep doctor in New York, Dr. Shukla, and he tells me exactly how healthy my sleep is.
Pristov places the kit on a reception desk, then goes into a room where Dr. Shukla is waiting for him.
Hello.
Hi,
How's it
good
going?
morning, Christoph. Thank you for coming in today. I guess you are here for your sleep test results. How do you feel about the night that you are putting the sleep test device on compared to all other, night that you've been sleeping?
Yeah, it went okay. It felt a little hard to sleep with all of this stuff on. I've been keeping track, and I can show you the spreadsheet actually, like a few basic metrics.
Yes.
And usually I'm getting, I think average for a weekday is about 8:06 or something, and then average for a weekend is about 8:35.
Clearly what looks like that you are reasonably very healthy person. You do take care of your sleep very well. But it turns out that you have mild sleep apnea. So 5 to 15 times an hour when someone stops breathing, we say it's mild sleep apnea. If you can say that is 4.7.
So I'm stopping breathing
4.7 times an hour. Your numbers are slightly above than normal. For that particular night, your total number that you stop breathing is around 41 times during that night.
It's shocking to hear that I stopped breathing 41 times in this
entire
relatively short night of sleep.
When you stop breathing, your sleep phase changes. It means this is a fragmented sleep. When you have fragmented sleep, many times patient does feel sleepy, tired, or less energetic.
Just how big of a problem is sleep loss?
Every time that you are disrupting your sleep cycle, you are interrupting your biological clock as well. And when there's a disruption, the chaos starts. And that chaos leads to mental health issue, to cardiovascular health issue, and it's really starts the aging process much more faster. And everybody has to be in sync to live healthy life.
Okay, this is what my night of sleep looked like. You can see me moving through the 4 phases of sleep. There is light sleep, and then deep sleep or slow wave sleep, and then these 5 chunks of REM, or rapid eye movement sleep. That's the phase during which we dream. I was not expecting to be diagnosed with a mild sleep disorder going into this story, but it does make me want to better understand what Dr. Shukla mentioned about this idea of being in sync with your biological clock. Everybody has a specific bodily schedule that determines when they should go to sleep and when they should wake up. It's called our chronotype. I wanted to figure out what mine was. It turns out there are online quizzes you can take or genetic tests that you can take, but there's also a much simpler way to figure it out.
He Skypes Joss and Lee.
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going well, man. How are you?
I have a request for you, and it's gonna potentially be weird and scary. I want you to try for 1 week to turn off your alarm entirely and go to bed when you're tired and then wake up when you are rested, but no alarm clock.
That sounds amazing.
This is the best task I've ever been given.
That's my main assignment for you for this week.
All right, man. I'll see you in a week.
Bye.
The three of them go through the motions of getting ready for sleep. They brush their teeth. Blinds are closed. Now it's daytime. Juice is poured and the blinds are open to let the light in. Day 1. Lee's lying in bed.
So it's about 8 a.m. And I just woke up. I like the safety net of having an alarm clock. I slept with anxiety all night long.
I woke up at 7:30, way earlier than I usually do.
My bedtime is kind of going later and later as this experiment goes on. Can you have a chronotype where you actually just go to sleep at 2 a.m. every day?
I keep waking up
Day 3.
way earlier than I planned on getting out of bed.
So I do feel like I'm sleeping more. I feel like I'm sleeping better.
It's really nice not to have an alarm. I'm really enjoying not having an alarm to wake me up.
I don't know what I'm supposed to be learning about throughout this experience
Day 7.
or what I'm supposed to do, but I'm exhausted.
Well, today was the last day of the no alarm experiment. Spoiler alert, I am not a morning person. I feel a little embarrassed because I've missed our 10 a.m. meeting pretty much every day of this experiment.
The three of them sit around a circular model.
Cool.
What is this?
So this is a big model of the circadian rhythm. This is the process that our bodies go through every 24 hours, like clockwork. So what I would love to do is just plot out when we went to bed and when we woke up on average for the past week. Should we do it?
Let's do it.
I went to bed on average at like 12:17 and woke up at about 8:45.
That's very precise. Mine was probably around midnight, and then I was getting up every day around 8.
And I'm the night owl of the bunch, I guess. My average bedtime was about 1:26, and my average wake time was 10:20. I'm so lazy.
All right, let's go through it. Right about when you wake up, your body starts to release cortisol. You have the sharpest rising blood pressure of the day, and you stop producing the hormone melatonin. And these things all together, those wake us up and start us into the day.
Daytime.
Daytime. So then intestinal movement begins for the day, the morning poop, biologically scheduled into your day.
Right after that 8 a.m. coffee.
Right, exactly. After that, your body is at its peak alertness of the day. Then there's this blank gap. It's the afternoon slump. A few hours later, your body has its best coordination of the day, followed by its quickest reaction time. Olympic athletes, for example, have their highest odds of beating a record if they are performing the sport exactly within this window. We near sunset, and then your blood pressure reaches its daily peak, followed by a peak body temperature.
So all of our bodies are doing this on this 24-hour cycle, but in terms of how that relates to our time and our clock, it can vary from person to person.
Yeah, your body is probably most alert at 1 p.m., whereas mine is probably most alert at noon, and Lee's is probably most alert closer to 11 a.m. If you are a night owl, this entire cascade of events shifts forward in time. And if you're an early bird, it shifts back in time. And then it's night. Your body starts to produce melatonin, getting you ready for bed. A few hours into sleeping, you fall into your deepest sleep, and then you fall into your lowest body temperature. And that's it, that's the whole cycle. And when we don't follow that schedule, especially when we cut sleep short, we're derailing every other thing in the cycle. So this chart shows the distribution of chronotypes, and the way that they measure that is by looking at the mid-sleep time on free days. So you'll see that for most people, their midpoint is about 4 a.m., which means that they're sleeping.
This is assuming they sleep 8 hours?
Yeah, but for the majority of people, getting to like an 8 or 9 a.m. job means waking up before their body is ready.
Wow.
Where that gets really concerning is with the health impacts of this distribution. The later that mid-sleep time is, the higher the rates of depression, of people who smoke, and of people who consume alcohol.
If it's the majority of us who are
Right.
suffering, like, why are we doing this?
When we have a world that is so preferential towards early birds and geared towards productivity in the morning, the people who don't fit into that really suffer.
Yeah.
Christoph speaks to Dr. Sachin Panda.
So you study these sleep-wake cycles that control every living thing in the world. What do you think are some of the big things that you wish people understood better about their ability to get a good night of sleep?
Our genome and almost every gene in our genome is programmed to turn on and turn off at a certain time of the day or night. So that means we are programmed to sleep for a certain number of hours. When we follow these rhythms, our body can perform at its peak performance during the daytime and can reset, repair, and rejuvenate at nighttime when we go to sleep. So that means when we don't sleep, it actually has huge cascading bad effect on our kidney, liver, gut, intestine, heart, even our skin, how we look.
Right. Beauty sleep.
We can figure out how to be the master of our own clock by adopting very simple lifestyle changes, such as when to wake up, when to turn on and turn off your bright light, when to eat, and when to stop eating. In a very simple sense, if you have the same schedule every single day, or at least 5 to 6 days in a week, that itself is a very powerful way to be in control of your circadian rhythm.
I mean, all of this is so fascinating because a lot of us think that we can sleep whenever we want, but it sounds like the body is a whole lot less flexible than we think it might be.
This whole idea that we can have 24/7 food delivery, 24/7 drugstores and grocery stores, those are all based on the simple idea that we can take our body for a spin at any given time of the day or night. And it's becoming more and more clear that if you don't have control over when you work, then you also don't have control over how much you sleep. It has come to a point that World Health Organization has now designated shift work as a carcinogen. And just imagine, just doing shift work is same as getting exposed to cancer-causing chemicals in environment. And that's very profound. That says how important sleep and circadian rhythms are.
Christoph's out on the street.
So shift work can be so bad for the human body that it's been classified as a carcinogen. But that's not a problem that everybody has to deal with equally. In the US, white people are overrepresented among those who start work at around 7 and 8 a.m. Black and Latinx people are overrepresented among workers who start in the early morning. And Black people are especially overrepresented among those who start work late at night. I'm on my way right now to talk to Dr. Girardin Jean-Louis. He's a professor at NYU who studies the health consequences of this racial sleep gap.
Unequal sleep, printed on a mug.
Can you sort of paint a picture of what sleep health disparities look like in the US? Who gets to sleep well in this country and who doesn't?
What we have been seeing over the last 50 years is that there's a disparities between blacks and white in terms of how much sleep they get. We're finding that blacks overall seem to be sleeping about 30 minutes less. And of course, there are repercussions. You're gonna be at greater risk for obesity, for diabetes, hypertension, and now we're seeing the same is true for Alzheimer's dementia.
Can you walk me through the factors that are particularly hitting Black Americans the hardest?
Well, socioeconomic factors, environmental factors, psychosocial factors. So for instance, if you find that in a community perceived racism is an issue, well, it's going to affect your sleep. If you happen to be in an environment where there is quite a bit of noise, it's going to affect your sleep. If you have light pollution, air pollution, all of those factors can influence your sleep. And we also find that there are a lot of black folks that are working 2 jobs. So the ability to actually set a schedule, you're going to go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, which is critically important, they don't have that luxury.
The map of the U.S. projected onto a screen.
So this is a map of short sleep duration by census tract. So this is where people are getting less than 7 hours of sleep per night regularly. Can you help me understand why this map looks the way it does?
All the areas that are dark suggest that these are folks who are really having significant problems sleeping. And as we get lighter and lighter, these are people that are doing okay. So what you want to see is communities like this seems to be doing well. whereas communities like this or like that are not doing so well. And why is that important? Because the higher the prevalence of short sleepers, the more likely you're going to be seeing obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, and to some degree cardiovascular disease, stroke, and myocardial infarction. What we also know is if you're looking at the obesity belt, this section also is where most people happen to be obese. So there seems to be a direct correlation between obesity and poor sleep.
So it seems like the places that really stand out to me are in the southeast, all along the Mississippi in the south here, this Kentucky, West Virginia cluster. Those are really the deepest reds, not to mention also right here, which are Native American reservations.
So here's what's interesting now. When we're looking at COVID data, we find that a lot of those people that are infected with COVID happens to be in the same area where people are having short sleep. So we know what's happening here is that if you're not sleeping enough, your immune system is compromised, so you're more likely to get COVID-19 infection and die as a result of it.
It sounds like sleep is a basic need that in a lot of ways has been turned into a privilege.
If your circadian rhythms are not robust, the ability to fight off certain diseases, the ability to remain metabolically healthy is significantly compromised because the circadian clock controls biological rhythm. So when you bring those two factors together, it makes it absolutely difficult for a Black person to actually stay healthy.
Chris Toff sits with Cleo, looking at public service headlines and vintage advertisements based around better sleep.
You know, at least for the past few decades, there's never been like a shortage of things to wake you up, things to put you back to sleep.
The truth is that for most of my life, I haven't had that much control over when I needed to wake up.
If we want to address sleep loss as the public health problem that it is, we have to do it through structural changes and policy changes, not just through individual changes. There are some policies that we know can make a difference.
They look at a pie chart.
So the first example has to do with how we schedule work. In 2015, there was this fascinating real-world experiment conducted on a steel factory in Germany. So basically all the workers normally would cycle through 3 different shifts. There was a morning shift that was from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., an evening shift that was 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., and then a night shift that was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Got it.
So they would cycle 2 days of each and then a couple days off in between.
2 days of each? Like they could never establish a routine?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. On this chart, each one of these is basically a morning person, someone whose chronotype is very skewed early. Each one of these is someone who has an average chronotype. And then each of these is a late chronotype, so a night owl. Very late sleeper. So then researchers came in, and what they did is they basically reassigned shifts by chronotype. So every single late sleeper was made to never work the morning shift. And then every early bird was made to never have to work the night shift. And the results were really, really fascinating. So for both the early chronotypes and the late chronotypes, sleep duration on work days went up, sleep quality went up, and their well-being on work days went up.
This looks really positive.
So there's a really strong case that employers should help their employees sleep according to their chronotypes. It makes a huge difference on their physical health, their mental health, their productivity, their happiness. And you do see different versions of this catching on. Southwest Airlines apparently lets pilots choose between an AM schedule versus a PM schedule for a lot of these jobs. It's about safety of everyone else around them.
When I look at this, I think the time in my life when I was most schedule constrained was when I was in school. Are schools doing anything different now?
Yeah, these same chronotype optimizing benefits are very apparent in school start time. So this is roughly what the adolescent chronotype looks like. The average teen needs between like 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And then this is what the average school schedule looks like, but the American Academy of Pediatrics suggests that school should never start before 8:30. So it's really this overlap that is just wreaking havoc on the teenage body.
They're doing calculus during their sleep schedule.
Entirely. So we're requiring kids to basically come into school way before their bodies are ready for it. There have been dozens of studies looking at what happens when you try to fix this. Delaying start times is associated with an increase in sleep duration, improved attendance, better grades, better graduation rates, lower rates of depression, and even fewer motor vehicle crashes. It's a long list of really good things from just 1 extra hour of sleep in the morning.
You just listed everything that's important for teenagers.
Yeah.
It feels like parents should care a lot about making this change.
Yeah.
Also, I gotta say, it doesn't seem like the hardest change in the world to make.
And these are just a start, right? This is just the beginning of what a world that takes chronotype into account when it comes to work, when it comes to scheduling everything, what that world could look like. It doesn't necessarily sound easy, but it does sound incredibly worth it. I started this story hoping to figure out why so many people struggle to get a good night's sleep. And the answer that I'm left with is kind of frustrating. You know, getting the right amount of sleep at the right time for your circadian clock, it's one of the most important things that you can do for your body.
Sleep is foundational. Anything in life requires a good night's sleep. So if you're not sleeping enough, everything is really on hold.
But the thing is, our schedules and our habits and our culture and our environments, all of those things get in the way of us doing so. But when we trivialize sleep, we're basically pretending that our biological limits matter a lot less than they actually do.
Public policy, workplace policy, school policy, all these policies have to change so that we can have a more coherent and synergistic effort going on throughout the society to nurture our circadian rhythms.
Does that mean that my takeaway is that we all need to turn off our alarm clocks and sleep whenever we want? No, obviously not. But there are things that we can do to help the people suffering the most from sleep loss to have the time and the flexibility to get rest when they need it. I think that's a good place to start.
I feel like I am not gonna have the greatest night of sleep. Oh, I don't like that.
So about 2 hours after you wake up, that's when you should go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting information. Not for me, obviously, but for other people.
Vox Media Studios. YouTube Originals.